This is a computer. It is about 2 meters tall. It is full of water, and the water is money. Specifically, this water is the British economy. And it worked. The economists who came to watch, several of them expecting a fiasco, went away convinced. Around a dozen of these machines would end up on 3 continents. The man who plumbed it had, the year before, been scraping a pass in a subject that bored him. 9 years later, he would draw the most famous curve in economics. A computer full of water, built in a garage. Surely a curiosity. Surely nobody serious ever actually used one. 1949. A postgraduate is stuck on a hard question in theory, whether savings must always equal investment, and has an odd thought. Money doesn't just sit in numbers, it flows. Stocks and flows of money could be thought of as tankfuls of water. This is Keynesian economics made physical. Though Keynes himself had died 3 years earlier, in 1946, and never saw a drop of it. The postgraduate is Bill Phillips, a New Zealand dairy farmer's son who had, by then, hunted crocodiles, ridden the Trans-Siberian Railway out of a war, and spent 3.5 years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, building a hidden radio. He came out with an MBE for wartime service, an engineer by training, a sociology student by accident, not in 1949 an economist. And he didn't build it alone. His collaborator was Walter Newlin, an economist at Leeds, who talked his head of department out of £100 to fund it, did the sanding and gluing himself, his words, craftsman's mate, and, when it was done, kept the very first machine at Leeds. They built it over one summer in a friend's garage in Croydon for about £400. The parts were whatever the war had left lying around, pumps from Royal Air Force disposals, a second-hand clock to drive the graph, small components made by a friend who owned a doll's eye factory, and to move the floats, the windscreen wiper motors out of a Lancaster bomber. Here is the trick. The water is money, and where it flows is where money flows. It drains out through taxes, savings and imports. It's pumped back in as government spending, investment and exports. Tanks hold the stocks. The levels in the upper tank set the interest rate and the exchange rate. It is quite literally the whole circular flow of an economy in plumbing. The economic assumptions live in a set of shaped cams. A float reads the water level. The cam translates it, non-linearly, into how far a valve opens. The shape of the cam is the economic relationship. Want to assume people save more as they get richer? You cut a different cam. Reshape the metal. Change the theory. Set it running, about 9 relationships moving at once, a slow motor plotting the result on a rolling graph, and the water finds its own level. It doesn't calculate a forecast. It settles into a new equilibrium, the way a real economy gropes toward one. In Phillips's own words, it records the solutions within the limits of its accuracy. Be careful what we claim. It modelled the circular flow. It did not run Britain. It had no prices, no wages, no labour market, so it couldn't even show inflation on its own. A partial model, tuned to real figures, reportedly accurate to within a few percent, 2 to 4 by later accounts. A claimed figure, never independently measured. Indicative, never a forecaster. Nor was it the first machine to think in water. A Soviet engineer had built a water integrator back in 1936. An American had modelled prices with tanks and levers as far back as 1891. What Phillips built was something odder, a working machine model of a whole national economy. Late November 1949. Phillips wheels the thing into a seminar at the London School of Economics, hosted by Lionel Robbins, in front of a room of professional economists. Many, by one account, come expecting a fiasco. He is a nervous lecturer with a heavy New Zealand accent. He turns on the pumps. The water rises, and the room is won over, including James Mead, a future Nobel laureate, who becomes its champion. The demonstration made his career. It also, eventually, got the machine a name, not from Phillips, but from an American enthusiast, Abba Lerner, who dubbed it the MONIAC, Monetary National Income Analog Computer, a pun on money, on ENIAC, and on maniac. Meade's enthusiasm turned into money. The LSE funded a second, tidier machine ready by the autumn of 1950, and Bill Phillips, the sociology postgraduate who'd scraped a pass, was quietly handed an assistant lectureship in economics. The plumber had become a professor in waiting. And then something genuinely strange happened. Other people wanted one, not as a toy, as an instrument. Universities wrote in. A tidy copy now cost the better part of £1,000, over £4,000 in American money, and still they wrote in. Which raises the question the machine's whole reputation turns on. Who, exactly? They did. Around a dozen were built, and they went further than anyone would guess. Cambridge bought one, Harvard bought one, Melbourne bought one and complained it had the potentialities of a recalcitrant student. Roosevelt College in Chicago, the University of Istanbul, whose machine survives, restored to this day. And the Ford Motor Company is believed to have bought one to model not a country, but a corporation. It got famous enough to mock. In 1953, Punch ran a straight-faced proposal that every town should own one to measure the local boom in soap, emery wheels, or white fish. When the satirists start pretending to take you seriously, you have arrived. And then the strangest customer of all. Not a university. A national central bank in Guatemala is believed to have bought a wardrobe of colored water to model its economy. This was 1953, in the middle of a standoff between the country's land reforms and an American fruit company, with a CIA-backed coup 1 year away. After the coup, according to research by the artist Michael Stevenson, the Guatemalan machine simply disappears. No record of where it went. A computer that modeled a national economy bought by a central bank, gone in a coup, its fate unknown. We are not going to pretend we know why. As for Bill Phillips, he never went back to being a plumber. He became a real economist, and in 1958, 9 years after the water machine, he published a single graph relating unemployment to wage inflation, the Phillips curve. For a generation, it was the most famous line in economics. He didn't draw it on the machine. He'd just spent a decade learning to think in flows. Most of the machines were eventually retired to museums, but not all of them stopped. A handful still run, restored, refilled, the crimson water still climbing the tubes for anyone who comes to watch a room settle into equilibrium. 70-odd years on, the joke object is still doing its one trick. There is even a novel about it. Terry Pratchett's Making Money, whose glooper is a hydraulic economic engine, lifted, he said, straight from Phillips's 1949 computer. In the novel, tampering with the water changes the real economy. That was the one trick the real machine only ever pretended to do. It modeled the economy. It never got to run it.